Think we are live, Robert.
Outstanding.
I didn't get to check to see if we have anybody on, but we have about an hour. So we'll get started and just have a conversation as usual with these live streams. So before we get into today's live stream, I just want to introduce myself. I am Florence Renee, the VP of Publicity and Sponsorship for PMI Central Illinois chapter. As you've seen so far this year, we've been coming online to talk about different topics with different people. And tonight I have a very special gentleman, and Robert Snyder. And you guys will get to know him, kind of listen to what he's about, and maybe learn a thing or two from Robert. Now, before I get into it, let me just do my quick usual disclaimer. So the views expressed on this live stream don't represent the PMI Central Illinois, current or past employers. They are our own views and thoughts, from our own lived experiences. So we're just going to go from here, Robert, and have a conversation.
Sounds great.
So I usually start with my guests and try to say, who are you? Where are you from? But let me just acknowledge one thing. You are my very first male guest. So far, I've had all females. They've been wonderful, wonderful women, accomplished women. And I'm just really glad to kind of be able to mix it up finally. And this happens to be our very final episode for 2023. So next year, I hope to have more variety in terms of our guests. But I'm just so glad that you reached out and we talked and you were on board to actually do this with me. So, Robert, you and I met back in 2022, and it wasn't until last night that we got to physically see each other in the flesh, because you came down for the 25th anniversary. And I am so appreciative. When I saw you walked in, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, this man is all the way up there in Chicago. And he drove 2 hours just to come hang out with CIC folks. Now, can you tell us a little bit about you and your connection to Central Illinois? Anything that you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So first of all, Florence, thanks for having me. It's a delight to have met you last night in person, to have been a chapter speaker about a year ago, and to be with you tonight. Mm-hmm. My family moved from Queens, New York to Eureka, Illinois in 1965, so before I was born. And my father took a professor position at Eureka College. So I was born in Peoria a few years later and lived in Eureka for 18 years. And, the big cities were Peoria and Bloomington Normal. And so that's the origin of me, my family in Central Illinois. And I still make it there, once or twice a year for different reasons, different events. I still visit Central Illinois, reasonably often. So flying down I-55, once you escape the city traffic, yes, it's an easy drive.
Easy. Well, it was great to have you down as our guest. And now, by you being up north in the Chicagoland area, does that mean you are a PMI Chicagoland member? Because you're not a CIC member.
Right. So I was a stowaway or an infiltrator last night. So thank you I was even a little bit surprised you let me in the photos. So that was very nice.
Of course.
So I've been a PMI Chicago member on and off, mostly on, since around 2005. I got my PMP in 2008. And I'll never let go of that, of course. That's my first bit of unsolicited advice for your viewers, is do not let your PMP expire. It's just not worth it.
It's not. And the PDUs are so easy to get.
Yes.
So there's no reason why anybody should let it lapse, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
So you've been a PMP for a long time. So does that mean you've always been in the project management space? Like, how did you get started? Basically, we can kind of go into that, like your professional background.
Yeah. So I would say it was one step at a time. I fell into project management. my undergraduate degree was in engineering. I was doing a lot of programming. I graduated from college, University of Illinois, in 91. The engineering jobs had dried up. So I returned to Anderson Consulting, where I had an internship, did programming for 3 years. And for anyone who's familiar with the traditional consulting career path, these consulting firms have an incentive for you to elevate your career and get into management. So I became a project manager in my mid-20s and was very software oriented. And so started out as a programmer, served as a database administrator for a while at Caterpillar in Morton. That was my first project out of undergrad. Ironically, going back, Morton is 15 miles from my hometown. And so it was in project management, risk management, very traditional roles, nothing special, until I went back for my MBA in my early 30s and then pivoted more toward business PMO and sales innovation roles. And so that's now where I feel I am, is I'm not super far from the code, and I'm still involved in testing activities, but I would call myself a business PM, a business PMO, who just with a really strong background in design, build, test. So, those guys can't pull one over me, because I've been there, done that with the code testing, deployments and that sort of thing. So, but I enjoy the PM function, and I've tiptoed into change management and business analyst roles as well. And I think that's a topic we might touch on, is the evolution of
let's talk about it.
These three roles. Okay.
This is a free-flowing conversation. Let's get into it, because I started out as a business analyst too. So I'm interested in your views and how you think it's evolved. Yeah. So
these three professions, these three job titles, a PM, change manager, BA, 10, 20, 30 years ago, everything was, if it was structured, if it had a methodology, whether it was called waterfall or not, it probably was waterfall. And then over the last 20 years, many or most organizations have either crawled, walked, or run toward agile. And I believe that most organizations now are neither purely waterfall, they're not purely agile. My sense is that everyone is, quote, hybrid. And a lot of, as I weave in and out of PM communities, change management communities, BA communities, the complaints I hear are very, very similar. And they're very similar to what they were 10, 20 years ago, about feeling marginalized, feeling administrative, note taker, a lot of meeting minutes. So I don't, but I also get the sense is that the PM community and these separate communities don't know that the other communities are experiencing the same thing. The BA community has held a webinar entitled, "Do BAs Have a Place in Agile?" And the change management organization has held a webinar entitled, "Is there room in Agile for change managers? Do change managers have a place in Agile?" And of course, project managers, there's this title called a Scrum Master. And, maybe folks shrug at the title project manager more and more. So the exasperation, if I was to characterize what I'm feeling in the innovation profession right now, is there's a whole lot of exasperation. And we hear that term VUCA, stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so back to these three professions, I believe that the exasperation is common. If misery loves company, a lot of us are feeling the same thing. And my somewhat controversial stance is that agile or hybrid, these methodologies are not solving the exasperation. They're not solving VUCA. And that's why I'm a soul on fire writing books to try to propose what's next, because these software-centric methodologies, they're not empathetic. And what makes innovation difficult, what makes teamwork difficult, It's not the software, it's people.
People.
So we need a people-centric methodology to calm and tame and neutralize the VUCA and solve this exasperation, or there's no end in sight to.
I will say, I think Agile tries though, the whole thing, people having the development team having a say so, they're able to provide input as far as capacity points. I think it's trying, but it sounds like you think it doesn't go far enough.
Right. I think the Agile Manifesto has not aged well. When it says things like the primary measure of progress is working software. Not empathetic in my book. What I'm trying to promote is a methodology that the primary measure of progress is a working team. I draw inspiration from teams that work like a symphony, a dance couple, a theater company, improv. Improv is what I call theater for a VUCA world. One of the reputations of improv is that it's a free-for-all, and that's absolutely not the case. There are rules. Even if you're not scripted, the world of improv has rules.
Agile has that reputation too, wouldn't you say, of being a free-for-all, like no, for example, the whole Agile, I mean, it has that reputation too, of being like a free-for-all, like no boundaries, you can just do whatever you want. So how do you answer that piece?
So I can try to represent pro-agile folks.
Yes.
And I can try to represent anti-agile folks.
Yeah, let's do both.
The risk with anti-agile is that then you're just labeled waterfall because no one thinks that there's a door number 3. And again, with my books, I am trying to propose book number 3. So I'm losing track of the question though. What's the?
No,
did you say
you were talking about Agile being like a free-for-all. I think people feeling like they can just do whatever they want with Agile. And I was just wondering if you don't think that was the same case for Agile.
So when I think of the rules of Agile, it's frequent go-live events. It's, again, I'm trying to quote the second page of the Agile Manifesto. It's that changes even late in the development cycle are welcome. So when you talk about a free-for-all, is it MBI, manage my interruption? I understand that it's, being rigid, being tone deaf is a bad idea.
Right.
Like if you're X% through a project and you learn something new, because how many projects learn something new while other projects are in flight? All of them. But I understand the reputation of waterfall, and I am absolutely not going to defend a methodology where the go-live events are 12 or 18 months apart. So if I go back to the origin, the impetus for the Agile Manifesto in 2001, totally makes sense because of what was going on with the internet in the mid and late 90s, when the only methodology that companies had was waterfall, where go-live events were 12 to 18 months apart. Well, now the intensity of innovation is increasing, and everyone and their mother wants a web page, and they want to be able to update it every 2, 3, 4 weeks. But what is on the internet back in the late 90s? I would call it glorified PDFs. We heard the word splash page, brochureware. So it absolutely makes sense to update your web page every 2 or 3 weeks. So that frequency made sense back then. It's 20 years later.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, so web applications are a little bit more sophisticated. So I believe that it's somewhat arbitrary to, like, what constitutes success is that you have a go live date every 2 or 3 weeks. So I just think that it's 20 years later. And again, the Agile has moved on. I'm not saying that I absolutely believe most companies do not interpret the Agile Manifesto literally. And we went through this phase where there's Agile with a capital A, uppercase, and there's Agile with a lowercase a. And Agile is not a methodology, it's a mindset. And well, of course, no one's signing up, no one's raising their hand saying, oh, I want to be rigid. Like, no one's saying that. But the origin of Agile, it is about, right, those 18 white dudes in Utah at that ski resort. It was all about the improving the delivery of software. It's all about the code. What about the team? What about the collaboration? What about anticipating team dysfunction and having the right behaviors and small wins and governance to minimize the team dysfunction? And I think that is where, Agile, the world asked Agile to solve software development, a software development organization, and it left a whole lot of other stuff out.
Right. And I think that's where all the different methodologies are coming in to try to fill the gap. And I would even say the whole product management thing versus project management is trying to respond to the gaps that the Agile people left out. I don't know if you've heard, but in my circle or social media mostly, it seems like there's a whole, confusion between Scrum Master, Project Manager, Product Manager, and some job postings are commingling all three. And it's almost like, who do you want?
Yeah.
Who make up your mind? So have you had any thoughts on that?
The same. I've seen the same because I've not been in the job market for quite a while. I don't have firsthand experience with what you're describing, but I do have secondhand experience. I'm hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
And the dysfunction in the talent pipeline of the recruiting, the latency, the duration, the hiccups, the surprises, or to whatever degree companies are using the interview process to learn truly what they do want and need. That's a whole nother event probably, right? And that's not my strength. I'm just saddened by what I'm hearing in the talent pipeline, the hiring process, the ghosting, the poor behavior, the surprises, the uncertainty, the ambiguity in these roles. That's not a place I've gone to try to help or figure out or diagnose. And I'm strictly about, the books that I'm writing, I'm trying to leverage my background in the performing arts. I'm trying to leverage my background in supply chain and operations. And I'm trying to leverage my background with really solid documentation that is durable, because I've worked in many places where they shrugged at documentation. They felt it was petty. It was administrative. It was an afterthought. And I believe that's the wrong approach to collaboration, teamwork, small wins. And so, that's really where I'm focusing on, is where I feel where I've got a unique background. And
let's talk about documentation, because it's also related to the whole Agile Manifesto too. Why do you believe documentation is important? I have my answer, but why would you more?
So documentation serves as the collaboration space. And you can take an example, take a project charter, a process flow, training approach, training materials. I count about 60 things that teams need to agree on and bundle on paper, because teams cannot just talk their way to success. They cannot just email, reply all, their way to success. Meetings and emails are wonderful servants. They are horrible masters. So documentation, it helps us when we have differences of opinion. It's not like I'm disagreeing with you or demonizing you. I'm just saying, hey, Florence, bullet 6, shouldn't that be on the next slide? Or the emphasis here, can't we, or that process flow, isn't that an automated step? So that box in the process flow, that actually belongs in this swim lane. So it's not personality conflict, it's task conflict. Disagreeing is okay. Demonizing is not okay. And so once we go through the 5 verbs, draft, review, revise, approve, distribute, that stuff is really, really durable. And so I hope that documentation feels petty. I hope it feels administrative, because that means it's easy. It forces us to be straightforward and simple. It undermines being long-winded. So I think that I love the quote, small hinges swing large doors. And if you are hyper obsessed as a team, what is next worth the 5 verbs? Instead of the RACI matrix, think of it in terms of durable documentation governed by the 5 verbs. It forms this agreement factory, and your future team thanks you. Because that documentation reduces the laboriousness of information sharing. It reduces the latency of information sharing. So for information and decisions to go from one corner of the company to the other corner of the company, now you reduce the latency of the information to travel. So I think documentation, it reduces laboriousness, it reduces latency, it reduces personality conflict, it replaces it with task conflict. It encourages divergent thinking, but then it commands convergent thinking so that we are aligned as we move on. So I hope it feels petty and administrative. Well, then I guess you'll have that stuff done by lunch then, right?
And I think that's one of the reasons that people don't like it, because it feels tedious. Like, why is this, it's like a bother.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned your book quite a few times. The one book I was aware of was Innovation Elegance. Can you kind of give us a quick overview of what that book is about? And then I think you have 2 more that you're writing. We can kind of touch on the other 2.
Yeah.
And what's the takeaway from all of them?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So the first 2 books I do aim to publish very soon. I had to pull them apart into 2 separate books strictly because, folks like Barack Obama can publish a 600-page book and people will buy it. Yeah. Robert Snyder cannot publish a 600-page book and have people buy it.
Right.
So the first book, I would say the intended audience for all of this is what I would call exasperated innovation professionals. So PMs, BAs, change managers who feel exasperated with their current environment, management, leadership methodology. I think this book is great for them. And I will tease those innovation professionals who are not exasperated. Pass on my book for now. So how I partition the books. The first book is what I'll call the material not in the weeds. It focuses on the metaphors of a factory. And even if your company, your team is not literally a factory, you should manage it like one because you care about all the same things, right? This agreement factory, this decision factory, you care about its speed, quality, waste, variability, ease, elasticity, its level of automation, autonomy. So that's the first half of the first book, is the metaphor of a factory and what culture traits do we have in our teams that improve or hurt the performance of our factory, that help or hurt the discipline in our teams.
Got it.
The second half of the first book is what I call Performing Arts Plus. So I call it the empathetic arts. And it contains sections on parenting, Aikido, a unique martial art.
What's that? Okay. Martial art. Okay.
It's a martial art. Improv, music, dance, and it's partner dance, and theater. And the value of the arts is that they they teach us culture traits for collaboration. So they give us a collaborative advantage. They teach us how to be very thoughtful about competition. Let's not be naive. It's not always collaboration every day. We're competitive beings. But let's be thoughtful about where does competition make sense for the bigger picture of things. And then the third culture trait that the performing arts teach us is audience centricity.
Explain that.
So in the performing arts, you have an audience. They pay the bills. In innovation, you have a customer. They pay the bills. You might have in the performing arts, you may have a picky audience or a forgiving audience. In innovation, you may have a picky customer, a picky user, or you may have a very forgiving, right? When we have opening night, there's a sense of celebration. In innovation, when you have a go live event, a release, hopefully you have a sense of celebration.
Yes.
There's a sense of practice and rehearsal and repetition. And there's a sense of after a show for a symphony or a theater company, maybe the cast or the symphony goes their separate ways. Well, in innovation, after a project is done, sometimes usually the project team disbands and goes about and does other things. But again, all these ensembles, yes, it's fulfilling. Like, hopefully you love being in a symphony. And being in a symphony, you have the best seat in the house. Hopefully you love being on the dance floor, dancing, ballroom, Latin, etc. And you have the best seat in the house. And in innovation, hopefully you love being a member of that ensemble. And hopefully you have the best seat in the house. And you relish, hey, guys, let's just remember how great this team is working. And let's not forget what it feels like. What are we doing? That we're imbibing in each other's collaboration, teamwork. I got your back, not watch your back. And so I love this sense of we're a team and we feel like a symphony. We're figuratively and literally in sync. So we enjoy it, but what are we doing it for? Who are we doing it for? It is someone outside the ensemble. It is a customer. It is a revenue. It's not a narcissist who hijacks the role of the customer. It is a revenue-paying customer. It is about the money. It is about profitability. And it's about something bigger than us, something that will outlive us. Companies want a purpose. And so when we're passionate about our customers, I just believe it's a beautiful metaphor for teamwork. And when businesses stumble and lose sight of why they do what they do, I think the performing arts are a great reminder and reinforcer. This is why we're doing that, because we love our audience. We want to serve our stakeholders. So I hope teams will draw inspiration from the habits of a symphony and all the performing arts.
You know what I like about, obviously your book isn't out yet, but when you did the presentation, what I like about it was how you kind of brought your background, your performing arts background into project management, into innovation. I wasn't expecting that. And I thought that was very interesting how you connected them together. So can you talk about your performing arts background? Like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? Were you always in plays as a kid? Or like, where did that love come? Where did it come from?
Well, I joke, so I can make fun of a small town, but I don't let big city folks make fun of a small town. Yeah. So when you grow up in a small town, what else is there to do then? Yeah. So I was in choir since I was a kid, and plays, musical theater from a young age. My dance background, it's a funny story. My freshman year at University of Illinois, one of my sisters was a senior at University of Illinois, and she was taking a ballroom dance class across the street from where I lived. And she had I'll just call this man a pest in her dance lesson. And she called me up my second week of college, and she said, "Little brother, you're going to join my dance class and be my human shield.
Oh.
So that was my first. I didn't stick with ballroom at that time, but my senior year in college, so just 3 short years later, I was in a house of about 10 guys, and we had a bet. And what that bet was about, I'll spare you. But I was on the winning side of the bet, and the winning. So half of us in this house, so 5 guys. The winning side of the bet, you had to take a dance lesson our last semester of college. So once again, I found myself in a dance lesson.
Interesting.
And then I got shoulders deep in it about 10 years ago. Salsa lessons were on my bucket list, and found myself at a place called Nacional 27 in River North in Chicago. And as I'm standing there in a big circle with a bunch of other guys, stepping quick, quick, slow, quick, quick, slow, I realized this is like the 25th beginner salsa lesson I've been in. If I find myself in a 26th beginner salsa lesson, I'm going to put a bullet in my brain. So I was on a dysfunctionally slow project at that time. And I just felt, if not now, when? If not me, who? Mm-hmm. I'm going to lose my self-respect if I don't get into this now and build the skills and jump into the community. And I have to say, it has been one of the highlights of my entire life. Wow. To be a member of the and I'm going to like well up in tears here. To be a member of the Latin dance community in Chicago is one of life's great luxuries. Wow. The friends I made, the teams I was able to join, I now enjoy teaching beginner dance lessons. Okay. And the application to innovation and teamwork, everything I learned on the dance floor applies off the dance floor. Leadership, followership, elasticity, attentiveness, resilience, resetting. The learning never stops. Mm-hmm. Not getting in other people's way while they're navigating their own dances. Again, the culture traits are endless. When you think of what can teams learn from the partner dance world, and it's a beautiful collaborative, but also competitive, and also audience-centric, customer-centric space that is nothing short of inspirational and fun.
Wow. So interesting how you got involved in it. And as you were talking, I was thinking about one thing that's warm or welcoming about project management or innovation, whatever term you want to use, is the fact that you don't have to have a purely technical background. It's so versatile. Like you could be maybe an arts major and you find your way in project work and innovation work, and you can use those skills, that degree for what you're doing now. And that's what I like about project management. Now, obviously, you started out on the technical side. If you had to do it again, would you have taken that same path?
I think so. Okay. So at that age, I was extraordinarily detail-oriented.
Okay.
I make fun of my major, electrical engineering. You can't spell geek without a double E. And I was programming from a very young age.
Okay.
So it made sense to me. So I think the time in your career to be extraordinarily detail-oriented, I think it's early. I think that the feedback I was getting throughout my 20s was very typical coaching. Hey, Robert, get out of the weeds. You have to think bigger picture. And I, did it sting? To be told repeatedly, you need to, have sight of the bigger picture, of course. But I think that is, I think that's normal feedback for young innovation professionals who have keen attention to detail. I think it's normal. So I don't know that I would do it any differently. I think
that makes sense.
It makes sense.
So those feedback that you were getting, were they from people like mentors, people who were kind of, who took a liking to you on the job and they were kind of molding you? Where was that? Where were they coming from?
Yeah, just in a word, my manager.
Okay.
and in my defense, hey, you told me to code this, so I'm coding this.
Yeah.
If you want me to spill outside my lane, okay. But yeah, so, mentors, managers, people who were 3 to 5 years ahead of me in their career, who were already getting out of the weeds, and they had a higher altitude of the team, of the project, of the customer, where I was absolutely in rows and columns of data, rows of lines of code. So
did you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, I'm relieved that I got that stuff out of my system at a young age. Could I go back? Probably. Do I want to go back? Absolutely not.
Right.
But I have no regrets. I got to travel at a young age and was living out of the trunk of rental cars all through my 20s. I'm glad I, got been there, done that, got the postcard to that as well. So I think that is a great time to be in the weeds. Again, that has such a negative connotation. And attention to detail, companies need that. Teams need that. Because when teams are sloppy, that's called bugs. That's defects. That's misunderstandings. That's ambiguity. So we need people with keen attention to detail. And I am absolutely relieved that I was able to do that early in my career.
That's good. So basically you had, you were branded basically as being too detail oriented. You didn't like that tag, right? So you worked on your personal brand. Like, how did you go about evolving from that? Like, what did you do if you remember, high level?
So are you asking like how
did you evolve from being, the heads down, all the details to the big picture? How did you make that progression? Or
because I started seeing the exasperation at a team level.
Okay.
And I, just like we learned from positive role models, I was learning from plenty of negative role models. And I saw the void of synchronization, for example, the void of listening, the neglect of servant leadership, listening, managing expectations, managing perceptions, handoffs, right? When you think of what are the most common cliches in team dysfunction, what are the most common hiccups, bugs, misunderstandings, I call it the pattern in the problems. And I started concluding that, there's not a million things that can go wrong. There's like a dozen. The 80-20 rule applies. 80% of team dysfunctions can be characterized by poor accountability, alignment, transparency, simplicity, straightforwardness, morale, momentum. And I'm now regurgitating my lessons learned template. So I got inspired because I was witnessing and feeling the exasperation of poor management, poor leadership, poor methodology. And I felt that I could help. I felt that I could do a good job in a project management role. So that's just some thoughts of how I got out of the weeds.
That's a good segue to my other question for you. Like, because I know you have your own consulting firm. I was curious to know, like, when did you decide to actually go off on your own? What was the motivation? I think I kind of pick up on your motivation, but if you don't mind, just expand a little bit.
Yeah.
And your company is called Innovation Elegance, and like, very unique name. Explain.
Okay. So I was in corporate America as recently as 2020. I started putting pen to paper on these books in the middle of 2019. So yes, I am very self-conscious that I am on, I think, month 54 and counting. But I joke that every day I don't publish prematurely is a good day. But so the company really is to support the book. Do I stay entrepreneurial after these books are out? Do I go back to corporate? I simply don't know yet. So the name Innovation Elegance. So when I think of brand or how I arrived on that title, the academic, marketing MBA person in me says innovation is the arena that I play, that I compete. So that's a point of parity. Elegance is how I'm trying to distinguish myself from VUCA, distinguish myself from the chaos. This is the point of distinction. And the reason I landed on the word elegance is because I was witnessing and experiencing repeatedly absolutely hideous Gantt charts, task lists and project plans that suffered from what I call verb sprawl. I'm sure many of the people in your audience have experienced verb sprawl, where you might have a task list or project plan with 30 distinct verbs, 40 distinct verbs, 50 holy ambiguity, Batman. There's a time and place for your exotic vocabulary. It's not in your project plan. This is what I refer back to, the agreement factory. You need 5, just like RACI never splintered into, oh, how many letters do we need in our RACI matrix? It was pretty stable at 4. So I'm not doing anything revolutionary. I'm just saying you need 4 rows, but I call it 5 verbs. That's all you need in your project plan, because evidently any other verb, it's not worth documenting. It's not worth reviewing, revising. It's not worth approval. So 6 to 12 months from now, no one's going to care. But when you think of 5 verbs in a project plan, that's a really elegant Gantt chart. So that's how I landed on that word, elegance. It's fierce discipline, but it's also very empathetic, because documentation is like a love letter to your future team. So, right, elegance is not a free-for-all, and it's not, draconian discipline. It is both, right? When you think of elegance of an ensemble, did they have discipline? Yes. Yeah. Did they have empathy? And can they forgive can they forgive a misstep on the dance floor? Can they forgive a clarinet player who sneezed at bar 56? Yes. Right? These small errors, the best ensembles can be very forgiving, empathetic, and move on from these things. So to me, elegance, as I try to build the vocabulary around the company and the methodology, the next layer down from elegance is discipline and empathy. So that's more background on how I arrived on that word.
Awesome. It sounds like a lot of thought went into it. It's almost like you're trying to, you're not just criticizing or complaining. You're jumping into thought leadership and trying to add your voice into it and hopefully, change those things that you think should not be. Now, as far as how you're spreading your message, because you have some strong opinions, I would say, even from talking with you last night. Are you doing speaking engagements, and how do you do that? How did you fall into it, and how's that going?
Yeah, so every day when I get up, it's all about the books. For me to move on with my life, I got to get these books out the door. In the pecking order, the second thing it's networking and speaking engagements. And I'm spreading those across the professional organizations of PMI, ACMP, and IIBA. And there's nothing that's complex enough. Those 2 things block out the sun. And we'll see what my audience says, good, bad, or ugly. If there's positive reactions to the books, I'll stick with it. If there's negative reaction to the book, I joke that I'm going to go schlep user stories at a really, 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 really big bank or Allstate.
Wow. Or you could go into academia too and try to make your impact there, mold them from the get-go, right? Get them right out of the gate. You can go there too.
I've thought about that. I really don't know. Right. And I'm just fortunate that I have the luxury from a lifestyle or finance perspective that I can, I really hope I'm going to go where I'm welcome.
Right.
I'm going to go where the market needs me, welcomes me. I'm ready for any of it. And, and the reactions I'm getting to the books, to my public speaking, the combination of positive and negative feedback that I'm getting, I'm not surprised, but I'm encouraged, and I'm going to keep going.
You did have some really good feedback for your presentation when you came in last year.
Okay.
So I would agree with that. I think there's this space for what you have to say, and hopefully, the people who need to know it and do better will actually catch on to your books and speeches and everything else. So you have a full plate basically, right? So how do you balance everything? Like, what do you do for your self-care, like your mental health? Like, how do you decompress, and what do you do?
Yeah. So as you were asking the question, the two words that came to my mind are focus and prune. Saying no can be hard. I love the phrase, smart strategy is knowing how to not spend your time. One of my mentors and professors in my MBA program, his name is Harry Kramer, Kraemer, and he has a book called The Rule of 168. And the reason why that is such a magic number is that I don't care what your name is, you get 168 hours every week to invest, and you're never going to get that time back. And he led us in exercises where we would, inventory, how do we currently spend our time? And we would, approximate, okay, do these sum up to 168? The sleep, work, friends, TV time, doom scrolling. We didn't use that term back in those days, but, time on social media, et cetera. And then you write down, what is your ideal allocation of investment of your 168 hours every week? So I'm trying to be as mindful as possible of how I spend my 168 hours every week. Now, during COVID, because I live in downtown Chicago near Lake Michigan, I had the luxury of being able to, everyone's wearing masks and this sort of thing. I get to walk around the Mag Mile, Michigan Avenue, the bike path in downtown Chicago. So I'm very fortunate to have, it's a scenic place to live. But I rollerblade, I play tennis, walk, run, never enough, of course. I still, like, a couple times a year, I still make it out to a salsa club. I know there's a Salsa Peoria club.
Oh, really?
I see those posts. So I know where those people are, and I hope to join them someday. So I hope, I hope to rejoin a dance team again someday. I'd love to be in a play again someday. I hope to rejoin a choir, but all that has to wait for the books and public speaking.
Interesting. They're basically your primary focus right now, all three of them. Now, are you planning to release them all at once? Like, is this, is there a cadence? Which one's coming out first? And when?
So the first book, I still think it's possible I will publish the first book before the holiday crush this year. So if I don't publish by November 15th, I probably will wait. I don't know that I want to compete with the holiday season. So the first book, the title is Innovation Elegance. The subtitle is Transcending Agile with Ruthlessness and Grace. The second book is entitled Innovation Portfolio. Subtitle, 5 Verbs Shape Your Team's Legacy.
Wow.
I think I'll separate those by about 3 months.
Okay.
The third book I had to shelve about a year ago because, it was just too much material. So the working title of that book is Elegant Leadership, Distinguishing the Good, the Bad, and the False.
I love all 3 names. Like, they're very provocative.
I'm glad because I'm trying to minimize redundancy. We can deny being students, but even at my age, I am absolutely still a student. That's why I attend so many events and enjoy listening to other speakers. I want to know what other people care about, what they're talking about, and I want to minimize redundancy. I want to minimize saying what other people are saying and writing. So by process of elimination, my stuff is going to be provocative because I'm trying to say what other people are not yet saying.
Gotcha. And I would agree, because I think I've seen you in a couple Chicagoland events. It's always nice to kind of see you at different events, and I'm sure when the books are out, you'll have a lot more time to, kind of not walk away from the books, but have a different outlet, or more than one outlet. Get back to dancing, because those things are important. The things that you love and the fun things, and
Yeah,
it's really important.
and I might. It's very possible I'll return to corporate America.
It's a good place to be. I'm in corporate America. I do not have a PM title, but it's a good place to be, and you can make it work. The future, I guess, you'll find out when the time comes. Go ahead.
I would love for more people who have background in the performing arts.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for them, and I'm going to use a provocative term, I would love for them to infiltrate corporate America because of those collaboration skills. One of my favorite, to try to keep myself succinct here, one of my favorite quotes from my world, my chapter in the dance world, Lisa Laboricua, founder of Latin Street Dance Company. We were in a beginner dance lesson in a studio. There's mirrors in front of all 20 of us. Mm-hmm. And there's this awkward silence in the beginner dance lesson. And to break the awkward silence, she yelled at us, "If you're smiling, you're doing it right." How magical would it be if we can say those things in corporate America? To bring in the habits, the language, the routines, the dedication, the humility of being a beginner, the beginner's mindset. How wonderful would it be if what we say in the workplace resembles what the performing artists are saying as they're growing, developing. And so I'm hoping that these books will not just cross-pollinate the concepts, but it will cross-pollinate the people. More corporate folks will go take that dance lesson. They'll go audition for blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And people in the performing arts will have more confidence that their skills are transferable, mm-hmm. and they can go be productive in corporate America in a absolute capitalist, corporate setting.
As you were talking about the infiltration that you would like to see, and being able to say what you feel like you want to say, it's interesting because we are going to kick off 2024 with a presentation on psychological safety. So on January 9th, we're going to have a psychological safety expert, Jessica Bench, come in and talk to our chapter on that very topic. I think it's so important. So I would support whatever movement your books start, because it's very needed. It's very necessary, especially in corporate America. And you don't even have to have a performance art background. It could be a liberal arts background, or maybe you were a teacher or a nurse and you want to pivot into projects and innovation work.
Yes.
So all infiltration is good. Infiltration.
Such a provocative word.
It is. We're being very provocative tonight.
I'm happy to hear that that is one of your first topics for next year. I think that's great.
Yep, January 9th, 5:30 p.m. Central Time.
Okay.
If you are watching tonight, and you are invited to join, because I know you show up to chapter events.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have that talk. Now, when it comes to how the depth and breadth of knowledge that you've picked up, what would be like your final, I don't know, a couple tips and wisdom, advice that you would be able to give to our members, anybody who's watching us? What would be one of those things?
So I'll try to form an answer around the word ensemble. That is, the French pronunciation ensemble means in English together.
Mhm.
The team is everything. It is the employee experience. It's what we're going to remember, because we don't always meet our customers. As innovation professionals, we don't always meet our customers. We always meet our team members.
Mhm.
So I hope that viewers and innovation professionals will be able to find ways to be less self-absorbed, less self-conscious, and, to use a dance metaphor, be who your partner needs you to be. Be who your team needs you to be, because that's a healthy place. If you are psychologically unsafe, if you're job insecure, if you're just wrapped up, or if you have coworkers who are just wrapped up in themselves, that can't be healthy. So I'm hoping that we, as innovation professionals, become more and more obsessed about team collaboration. And one more little vocabulary bit is that over the last 20 years, corporate America has had this term, competitive advantage. We need to pursue competitive advantage. Well, my hypothesis is that is starting to plateau. The value of that is starting to plateau, because in this hyper competitive environment, it is turning into this communication traffic jam. So to tweak that term, competitive advantage, what would it mean to have a collaborative advantage? And so when your team is the most amazing team, that is when you win. So instead of thinking competition and competitive advantage, maybe that would be a nice term to end on, is what does it mean, going back to this word ensemble, what does it look like for us to have a collaborative advantage?
Got it. And that's a good message. Now, not to open a new can of worm, but with the whole hybrid team working remote, how does that feed into that whole collaboration that you want to see? Do you think it helps, hinders? Like, what's your view on that?
So I have not taken a strong stance on that, because, again, it's all about the 5 verbs. I don't care where you are geographically. If we're in the same room, we're looking at a non-electronic interface like a whiteboard or a literal piece of paper, old school piece of paper, or if we're looking through Miro or Mural or Google Docs or whatever, it is the canvas. It is the collaboration space. And as long as we can hear each other, forgive each other, have task conflict, not personality conflict, and because my energy is on the collaboration space. Geographically, I don't care where you are. And now if there's like personnel issues or crucial conversations, then okay, take a flight, get on the expressway. But I personally, I'm not interested in joining the conversations about in office or remote, because I'm just obsessed with the 5 verbs.
Gotcha. And I agree, it really shouldn't matter. And most of the time, I think it's been proven with all the remote work that's been happening since COVID, that collaboration and the work is still getting done.
Yeah.
So at least for teams who don't necessarily have to be in a building.
Yeah. I do think there are things to put on paper, like status reports, telling your boss, hey, my workload is this. There are things that innovation professionals need to put on paper to, even when they're remote, to maintain trust. That's a deeper conversation. And as you said, let's not open up another can of worms.
Yeah, it's a huge debate around social media, the whole remote versus,
and I just don't think that is the right, I think that's not the right that's not the right first conversation. If you have trust issues, geographically where you are is not the first lever to pull and push about regaining trust.
Gotcha. I agree. I would agree. Totally agree. We are coming up on an hour.
Yeah. Good
And
pacing.
I think we expected it to actually go this long, and we could have gone deeper if we could, but we only have an hour,
Yeah.
so I think we did our last live stream justice. So Robert, let's just stop here.
Yeah.
And I can't thank you enough for your time and all your insights. And I'm excited for you as far as writing those, at least the 2 books, and getting them done off your plate soon. And I'll make sure to watch for you. You do have a website. I believe it's innovationelegance.com. And you are on LinkedIn. You're very active. So people can go and follow you and follow up on the books by visiting your website. And of course, on that note, you can always follow me here on LinkedIn, follow my chapter, and visit us on our website to keep up with the events that we have. Like I was saying, we have a psychological safety event coming up on January 9th at 5:30. But even before that, we have one more chapter event coming up in November. It's going to be with multiple chapters. For example, PMI Los Angeles. It's going to be with David Mentica. And the conversation or the presentation is Agile Concepts for Management and Leadership Success. So I hope that conversation will, as you can tell, we love all these different methodologies. We're always looking for speakers to kind of bring different flavors to it. So we're going to have one in November 28th. And maybe you might do a second presentation for us, Robert. I don't know what 2024 will hold. But I'm excited. And I'm so grateful to you for saying yes, for wanting to come on our little live stream and share your ideas. And I'm feeling very grateful. And I think anybody who catches this live whenever, they will find something useful in it and some takeaways, more than one takeaway from our conversation. Do you have anything you want to plug besides the book? Are you speaking anywhere soon or?
Thank you for asking. So this week I'm speaking for PMI. I think it's called Coastal Bend. Okay. It's, I believe, the Galveston, Texas area.
Okay.
In the business analyst community, there's a online event, Festival of Business Analysis, that's Australia based.
Okay.
So Festival of Business Analysis is the whole week actually, and I'm not traveling to Australia.
Right.
And then actually Monday at 1 a.m., there's a London-based event. So Monday morning, it's about metrics, what is worth measuring to grow your business. So it's not strictly innovation or project management. Mm-hmm. It's zooming out about what's worth measuring in business to track growth. So this coming week is a busy, fun week for me.
Yeah.
And again, I want to return the thank you, Florence. I'm flattered that you invited me. It was a delight to do this and banter, and I loved meeting. I met a dozen or so folks from your chapter last night.
Yeah,
and I love Central Illinois. I have great memories from it. It is such a pleasure to meet people from there. Another compliment I got from a family member who recently visited Illinois. One of my nieces, I took her to the University of Illinois football game in mid-September. And out of the blue at one point, she said to me, Uncle Robert, Illinois people are so nice. And it was not like, it was very earnest and very serious. And it was profound. And I was so happy that my niece said that about my home state. And I think it applies to the city, it applies to downstate Illinois, Central Illinois in particular. And I was so proud that I heard my niece say that. And I think that, I want Illinois people to take all the pride we deserve, here at this point in our country's history.
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. Well, on that note, we will say good night. You guys go on and have a great rest of your weekend. And we will work on filling up our schedule for 2024. like I said, keep up with me, keep up with Robert, keep up with the chapter, support us. Every support, every member, follower, we appreciate it all. So, Robert, you have a great evening. I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
Florence. Okay. Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.